Can improving your foot intrinsic strength reduce your risk of running-related injuries? Previously, we have seen studies come out that looked at elderly populations and young athletes when they trained their foot intrinsics. And in the elderly populations, we saw reduced risk of falls up to 7 times. And in the young athletes, we saw increased jumping performance. But does this translate over to runners? Recently in 2020, we had a study show up called Foot Core Training to Prevent Running-Related Injuries. And it was designed to address this specific question, and will improving your foot intrinsic strength reduce your running-related injuries? They theorized that it may play a role in dampening your impact and being able to help you propel your body forward when running. The study looked at 2 groups, a control group that basically stretched the whole time, and then an intervention group where they did a series of foot intrinsic strengthening activities 4 times a week up to a year. Now, this is a really good study, I think, because it follows them over the span of a whole year and not just over a short period of time like 8 weeks. So what was the outcome of the study? By the end of the year, they saw that there was a reduced risk of 2.42 times the amount of running-related injuries in the intervention group compared to the control group. Basically saying that if you performed foot intrinsic strength training exercises for 4 times a week up to a year, you will be 2.42 times less likely to have a running-related injury compared to people who just do a basic stretching program. The authors also noted that you don't start seeing the protective benefits of the exercises until you've been performing them for up to 4 to 8 months, which is very realistic to me because in order for you to make changes to your body, you have to train it over a period of time before those training effects start taking place. So what exactly were the exercises they used in the study? Well, let's go ahead and go through the list of exercises so that way you know what they did. And then we can talk about at the end what I liked about them and what we think maybe we could try to see if we can improve them a little bit. With each of the exercises, we should note that they have a progression listed in order for you to have a kind of a beginner, intermediate, and an advanced section. Everybody started off in the beginner section, and then if you fit a certain criteria, you would then be able to move on to the intermediate stage. If you fit that criteria, then you would move on to the advanced stage. In order for you to progress to the next stage, they had a rating scale of 0 to 10. 0 being really easy, 10 being really hard. If you fit between 6 and 7 on that scale of how hard the exercise is or how crampy your foot felt, then you were in the right area. Then you would not either move down or move up. If you were below a 6 on that scale, so if you were somewhere between 0 and 5, then you needed to progress up into the next group. If it was too hard, if it was between 8 and 10, then you would actually have to move back down to the previous group. The first exercise is a foot tapping exercise. You start off in a seated position, you have your heels on the ground, and you raise your toes up and down. You do that as fast as you can for 30 times. If you were able to do this well, then you progress to the next group, which is you would do that 2 times. Then, if you did that well, then you would progress to the next group. Still sticking with 2 sets, you would do that 40 times. Also noted on this exercise is that if you could do it really well sitting, then move to standing as quickly as you could. The next exercise is a traditional calf raise. The first stage is you would go up and down on your feet. You would do that 30 times for 1 set. Next, then you would do that for 2 sets, and then next you would do that 2 sets for 40 repetitions. It is noted on the exercise that if you need help with balance, you are more than welcome to use a wall or a chair or a table to help with your balance. The next exercise is looking at inverting and everting your foot. Starting off in a seated position, you are going to take your feet and you're going to alternate inversion and eversion on either foot. The first stage is you would do this for 10 repetitions, holding for 1 second each time. The next stage is you move up to a standing position and inverting and everting your foot, 1 set of 10. And then the third group would be doing it 20 times, but this time instead of holding it only for 1 second, you would hold it for 2 seconds. The next exercise is looking at a traditional foot abduction exercise. Obviously with this exercise, the strength of the band matters, but in this study, they don't address the strength of the band. They look more at volume. The first group starts off with 2 sets of 10. They will then progress up to 4 sets of 10 and then progress up to 6 sets of 10 and not change the resistance of the band. The next exercise is a dorsiflexion exercise where you place a band on the top of your foot and you keep your heel on the ground and you raise the foot up towards you to give the front of your leg a workout. The first group starts with 1 set of 10. The next group you move up to doing 2 sets of 10, and the next group you'd be able to move up to doing 3 sets of 10. Again, with this exercise, they don't manipulate the resistance of the band to progress at all. The next exercise is a ball grab and squeeze drill. Basically, you start with the ball on the ground. You use your big toe and some of the little toes next to it, and you pick up a ball and you hold it above the ground for 5 seconds and then set it back down. You start off in the first group with a sitting position, 1 set of 5, holding for 5 seconds. The second group, you will progress up to doing this while standing, doing 2 sets of 5, holding for 5 seconds. And then the third group, you can do this standing, holding for 3 sets of 5. The next exercise is very similar, but instead of using the big toe, we are now only using the little toes. Now, if you've ever tried to grab a hard ball with your little toes, you can see how it can be very difficult. So with this one, they are actually progressing the exercises by using a very squishy ball and progressing by going to something that is harder. Ideally, you can start with something like a cotton ball, and then once you get used to that, you start improving the firmness of the ball until you get to something like a marble. For the exercise, you're going to be holding for 5 seconds, doing 1 set of 5. It is noted that with each progression, we are not increasing the volume with this, we are just improving the firmness of the ball as we progress. The next exercise is looking at squeezing a toe separator. Now, some people don't have toe separators, and so if you don't have one, you can easily use something else to put in between your toes. In this video, I'm demonstrating placing towels in between your toes. And all you do is you put towels up in between your toes, you take your toes, you squeeze them together and hold for about 1 second. And we do this in a sitting position. In order to progress, we just improve the volume. So the first group is 1 set of 10. If you can do that, move up to 2 sets of 10. If you can do that, move up to 3 sets of 10. The next exercise is again looking at foot intrinsic strength. You're going to be doing toe abduction and adduction. The way this works is you're going to be starting off in a seated position, and you will be doing 1 set of 10, holding for 2 seconds. You're going to push your toes out as far as you can and hold for 2 seconds, and then squeeze your toes together and hold for 2 seconds. You'll do this for 1 set of 10 initially. To progress, you will move up to a standing position, doing this for 2 sets of 10, and then progressing even further, you can stand up, do this again for 2 sets of 10, but this time hold for 5 seconds instead of only holding for 2 seconds. The next exercise is the traditional short foot exercise, where you can start in a seated position. You're trying to take the ball of your foot, that big joint right in front of the big toe, and you're trying to bring it as close to your heel as possible while keeping that joint on the ground and your heel on the ground. The idea is that you're going to be holding that contraction, trying to maintain for 5 seconds, and you will start off doing this sitting position, doing this for 1 set of 10. Once you can do that, you can then progress up to a standing position, again holding for 1 set of 10, and then progressing even further, moving up to standing on one leg, doing it for 1 set of 10. Now the next exercise is actually very similar to the previous exercise, and in fact in the study they don't really give a good idea of how they delineate the two. So this is my best interpretation of what I think is the difference. So with the short foot exercise, you're trying to bring the joint of the first toe towards the heel. With this next exercise, it's called a plantar arch raise, and you basically, instead of trying to bring that joint up close, you're now allowed to curl your toes to be able to raise your heel up off the ground as high as you can. The progressions are similar to the previous exercise. You start in a seated position, doing 1 set of 10. You can then progress up to doing this in a standing position, doing it for 1 set of 10, and then progressing to on one leg or single leg, doing it for 1 set of 10. Now I know what you're thinking after looking at the amount of exercises. You're thinking this is going to take a very long time, and you would be right. The study shows that most people complete the routine in about 20 to 30 minutes. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know very many runners that want to give up 30 minutes of their day 4 times a week. That's 2 hours a week of foot-specific exercises. Now, on one hand, it does show very good data that it can reduce your risk of injury up to 2.4 times compared to the control group. So that does have that going for it. However, it is a lot of time to be able to spend on one type of exercise when there are other things also that you need to be thinking about, like your hips, your knees, your stability, all these different things that we need to be thinking about as runners that we want to be doing exercises for. We need to be working on some of those things too. So let's start taking a look at this routine and see where can we start making some changes to help us be able to fit this more reasonably into our everyday life. Let's start off with one thing. If you are able to do a lot of these activities, then maybe you don't have to do them as much. Maybe you can reduce the amount of times that you're doing them. Maybe instead of doing them, 3 sets of 10, you could just do them like 1 set of 10. Or maybe doing them less times throughout the week. Instead of doing 4 days out of the week, maybe only do them once a week in order for you to be able to retain your abilities to be able to manipulate your toes and different things like that. However, on the other side, if you are having trouble with these exercises, then it's probably imperative that you work on building your ability to be able to do those exercises. So it may be beneficial for you to take the time and go ahead and working through these drills. Once you acquire the ability to do them, then you can start reducing the volume of doing it and doing more maintenance rather than trying to build up the skill. Some other ways that I would try to see if we can improve the program is by increasing load. Most of the drills look at increasing volume rather than increasing the intensity by improving the resistance or load. For example, the heel raises are great exercises for runners, but doing 40 of them in a row, is just a lot of volume of heel raises. Why don't we instead do a more traditional strength routine where we start doing like cyclical loading patterns where we do maybe 3 sets of 10 up to maybe 15 repetitions. If you can do 3 sets of 15, then increase your load by holding on to a weight and then dropping down to, again, doing 3 sets of 10, working your way back up to 15. By doing this, we can improve the actual power of the muscle by improving the resistance that we are placing upon it. Same thing goes with the banded exercises too. Instead of just using the same resistance band, why don't we improve the resistance of the band over time? So that way we're not doing 6 sets of 10 of the same exercise. We can pull that back to maybe doing 2 or 3 sets of 10 and increasing resistance as we go. All in all, I think this is a really great study that looks at foot's intrinsic strength and your ability to be able to stay injury-free while running. While this isn't foolproof, for example, there were people that still got injured in the experimental group. There were still people that got injured. However, you were much less likely to get injured than in the other group. Running is all about mitigating risks. What can we do to reduce the risk of injury? Anytime we go out the door and we run, there is a risk of injury. What can we do to prevent and reduce that risk so that way we can enjoy our sport longer and be able to improve our running times? I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys have any comments or questions, leave those down in the comment section below. If you guys are interested in coaching services or in a running specific evaluation, check those out in the description below. I hope you guys have a great day.